Hi guys, I'm Jesse Palumbo, and the topic that I've chosen to cover is Week 9's gender and sexuality. Um, I've the question that I've been asked to do for this specifically is draw upon the required and recommended readings to argue one of the following: representations of men, women, or sexuality are either progressing, regressing, or stagnant. From this, I have chosen essentially to say that the representations of men in the media sphere are actually regressing. So the common depiction and representation of men and the masculine energy, whilst once being central to global evolution, is now at a point of societal regression. So, within my presentation, points that I will be covering with regards to this topic are: what is masculinity, historical evolution of masculinity and men in general, masculine identity in the media sphere / in the entertainment industry, the typical portrayal of the masculine identity, and then I'll be concluding and discussing further through some questions as to how this can be propelled. So, in terms of masculinity, as a definition of mine, but it does vary from person to person and within the context that I said, masculinity is a term used to describe the energy of the male gender that differs due to social factors and global content, e.g. ethnicity, race, culture, religion, political preference, and so on. So basically, masculinity is a term that is defined according to different communities across the globe within context of how they live. Within the text that I've chosen to study, masculinity is said to be epitomised within Western culture in the 1980s through such prevalent characters as Arnold Schwarzenegger, the actor, which is very famous, and Clint Eastwood, who represented strength, toughness, attractiveness, heterosexuality, and whiteness. So essentially, these characters are very stereotypical of what a man should be within the eyes of the general public, so to speak. It's like the ideal perception of men. So moving on, there's a couple of images there, if you're following along. Alright, so the evolution of masculinity. As far as I'm concerned, as I said, that masculinity is regressing. So essentially they started out, well, we even started out as Homo sapiens, which was once the dominant species on the earth, which entered into a swift decline during the 20th century due to social, economic and environmental factors. So essentially this primitive race of man disappeared due to an inability to change and adapt with the world, and they were very set in their ways, which is not uncommon in modern depictions of men, which I went on to say modern masculinity takes refuge in patriarchal depictions of the past. However, it has adapted to the social normalcy of today's world, particularly in the sense that there is a willingness to please women through sensitivity, attentiveness, and so on. So there's not that much of a difference. They have adapted slightly, well, we have adapted slightly as a gender, but in essence they are still confined by a depiction of in the past. There is, however, there's a major core commonality between the two types of men, the modern and the past, and that is aggression and or violence as a means of problem solving. So people and men in general tend to still look to violence instead of using their words to solve problems, be that mental health, work problems, family life, friends, and so on, just anything in general. They resort to bottling up their emotions, and they come out in acts of physical violence instead of using their words. And within Western society, particularly through media, if there is if there's a purpose for brutality and violence, that there, in the sense that there's a common agenda that will help people, it's glorified. So it's not condemned violence. So people still think tends to be okay. So from this, masculinity as a collective term is achieved through the past and the present in ways of achieving social and physical power or stature. So if you gain prowess as a man and stature, it is seen to determine your worth to society. So men who have a big physical presence, or men who are high up within their jobs, especially in the business world, and have dominion over other men, over co-workers and so on, that is seen to define the perfect perception of a man and how to best be masculine and how to best accentuate the core values of a man. So, masculinity in crisis. The qualities and the past values of men are commonly marginalised and not accepted by the global collective, largely because these values and qualities are part of something that is no longer socially okay. So men once were weighted hand and foot, expected to play a certain role within the family, provide, but then they weren't equal to women, so to speak. They were obviously posed as a higher part of society. So this perception is definitely brought about by social change, which is feminism, gay rights, and so on. Those movements really help to radicalise how we see gender roles within society, and how work and family life can be defined in a different way. Male constructs within the realm of Western entertainment. So, this quote, comic actors put the spotlight upon impossibility of achieving perfect masculinity. So, at large, there is a tendency for male actors to be, and female actors to be cast in a certain light when playing in a movie. It has changed dramatically over the last probably 2 or 3 decades, but a tendency to place them in certain roles. For example, Chris Hemsworth's character Thor in the Marvel Cinematic Universe conforms to that of his predecessors as like a Prince Charming type figure, so that at the end of the day the male is always the central lead figure with a supporting role from the female, and they always play an individual who is aesthetically pleasing, strong, has a macho bravado, and always ends up being they always end up saving the day. They're always the high point within the plot of a movie. And yeah, I think there has been strides in this area with switching that up and putting females in positions of power with regards to acting, but at the end of the day, at large, most of the favourite characters from, besides the Marvel world, most of the favourite characters across genres who play big roles are generally men, and yeah, that just seems to be the way it is. Okay, so in conclusion, being male or assuming a masculine energy, I believe, is limited by its supposed strengths. Whilst patriarchal representations were once prominent, they are now challenged and marginalised. Men are limited by their own desire to conform to what historically they have been subjected to. They are unable to defy social barriers, labels the same for women, because the blueprint of what it means to be masculine has already been defined for them. Men's stature and worth, whilst being still relevant, has significantly diminished because of an inability to rebel against associated negative societal expectations and perceptions. Their identity as a collective has determined their prominence as individuals. So, in my view, men are confined by what they are. So their strengths as men and the common depictions and a lust to achieve being masculine and to be the perfect representation of a man has meant that men are confined to certain roles and they're unable to, they're defined by their gender, much the same as women, and they're unable to push through the barriers and have an identity that doesn't surround their gender. So what they do, where they work, who they associate with, their family, if they're married, if they have children and so on, is all part of their identity, and in that they can't escape perceptions and means of regression, because even though they were once a reliant factor in society, significantly they're going the other way and they're being oppressed. Well, we are being oppressed, not in a way that has diminished power completely, but in a way that means that men are now part of the background a bit more, and their values and things that they try to aspire to be as far as being perceived a good man is holding them back almost. So yeah. Lastly, the questions. So this is for you guys. This is number one. If representations of being male are at a point of regression, are there any means of mitigating this statement? Why not? On a personal level, what does it mean to be masculine? According to O'Shaughnessy, Stadler and Casey, masculinity is in crisis. Make comment as to what you think about the current representations of men in contemporary media. And lastly, share an example of any sort that you think has redefined traditional depictions of a patriarchal man, be that an individual, event or action. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. Cheers.